My wife wanted an open marriage and started missing our autistic daughter's therapy for dates. When I found her researching institutions to dump our child, I began recording. She thought I was weak. The court proved otherwise. My name is Garrison Mitchell. I'm 48 years old, and I've been installing solar panel systems across Riverside County, California for the past 12 years. It's honest work that pays the bills and gives me the flexibility to be home when my family needs me. At least, that's what I thought mattered most. I've been married to Belinda for 18 years. She's 40 now, works part-time at a dental office, and for most of our marriage, I thought we had something solid. We've got one daughter, Iris, who's 15 and was diagnosed with autism when she was 3 years old. Raising a special needs kid changes everything about your life, your priorities, your schedule, your finances. But I always figured we were handling it pretty well as a team. Iris is high-functioning, but she needs structure and routine to feel safe in the world. Every Tuesday and Thursday, one of us drives her to behavioral therapy sessions that cost us $200 a pop. She's made incredible progress over the years, but she still struggles with changes to her routine and gets overwhelmed in crowded places. That's why what happened that evening in late March felt like such a betrayal of everything we'd built together. I just finished installing a complex solar array on a mansion up in the hills. One of those jobs that takes 3 days and pays enough to cover Iris's therapy for 2 months. I came home tired but satisfied, looking forward to a quiet dinner with my family. The house felt different the moment I walked through the front door. Iris was in her room with her headphones on, working on one of her detailed drawings of historical buildings. But Belinda was sitting at our kitchen table with a bottle of wine, already half empty, and a stack of printed papers spread out in front of her. She looked up when I entered, and there was something in her expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, but a kind of cold determination that immediately put me on edge. "We need to talk," Belinda said, her voice steady but strangely formal. I set my tool bag down by the door and grabbed a beer from the refrigerator. "Sure. What's going on?" Belinda gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down first." I sat down, already knowing this wasn't going to be a conversation about Iris's progress report or our weekend plans. The papers on the table looked like printouts from websites, but I couldn't read them from where I was sitting. "Garrison," Belinda began, "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about our marriage, about my life, about what I want for my future." "Okay," I said slowly. "And what conclusions have you reached?" She took a long sip of wine before answering. "I've realized that I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time, and I don't think you've been either." I stared at my wife across our kitchen table, trying to process what she was telling me. The woman I'd been married to for 18 years, the mother of my special needs daughter, was essentially telling me that our life together wasn't enough for her anymore. "Belinda," I said carefully, "I think you're beautiful every day. I tell you that regularly." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You tell me I look nice when I'm heading out the door to work. That's not the same thing as making me feel desired. So what exactly are you saying you want?" Belinda leaned forward, her hands wrapped around her wine glass. "I want to feel alive again, Garrison. I want to remember what it's like to have someone pursue me, to flirt with me, to make me feel like I'm worth the effort." A cold feeling started spreading through my chest. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" "I want to open our marriage," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "Just temporarily. Maybe 6 months. I want the freedom to explore connections with other people." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "You want to have affairs." "I want to have experiences," Belinda corrected. "I want to remember who I am outside of being a caregiver and a wife." I stood up and walked to the kitchen window, looking out the solar panels I'd installed on our neighbor's house last year. The irony wasn't lost on me that I spent my days powering other people's homes while my own family was apparently running out of energy. "What about Iris?" I asked without turning around. "How do you think this is going to affect her?" "She needs stability, routine. You know how she reacts when anything changes in the household." "Iris doesn't need to know anything about this," Belinda said. "We'll be discreet. I've already thought this through." I turned to face her. "You've already thought this through? How long have you been planning this?" "I've been considering it for a few months," she admitted. "And I've met someone who understands the situation." The cold feeling in my chest turned into something sharper. "You've already met someone?" Belinda nodded. "His name is Donovan. He's 38, divorced, no children. We met in my yoga class. He knows I'm married, and he's okay with that. I sat back down, my legs suddenly feeling unsteady. So you're not asking for permission. You're telling me what you've already decided to do. I'm trying to be honest with you, Belinda said. I could have just started an affair without telling you, but I respect you too much for that. You respect me too much to lie about cheating, but not too much to actually cheat. Belinda's jaw tightened. This isn't about cheating, Garrison. This is about saving our marriage. By destroying it. By giving us both what we need, she said firmly. You get to keep your comfortable life and your routine, and I get to feel like a woman again instead of just a caregiver. I didn't sleep that night. After Belinda dropped her bombshell about wanting an open marriage with her yoga instructor, I told her I needed time to process what she was asking. I spent most of the night in my workshop in the garage, surrounded by solar panels and electrical equipment, trying to figure out how my life had taken such a sharp turn. Around 5 in the morning, Iris found me there. She was already dressed for school, carrying her backpack, and wearing the noise-canceling headphones I'd bought her for crowded situations. "Dad, you weren't in your bed," she said in that direct way she had. Autism stripped away most social pretenses, which I usually appreciated. Today it just made everything more complicated. "I had some thinking to do, sweetheart. Did you sleep okay?" She nodded, then tilted her head slightly. Mom was making noise in the kitchen very late. She was opening and closing cabinets. It disrupted my sleep schedule. I felt a familiar surge of protectiveness. Iris picked up on household stress, like a barometer detecting changes in air pressure, and it always affected her behavior for days. "Mom and I are working through some adult problems," I said. "Nothing that affects you, okay?" Iris considered this for a moment. "Are you getting divorced like Tommy Patterson's parents?" The question hit me harder than I expected. "Why would you ask that?" "Because Tommy's dad started sleeping in their garage before the divorce happened." "You slept in the garage." I pulled Iris into a careful hug, mindful of her sensitivity to physical contact. "I'm not going anywhere, Iris. That's a promise." When I finally went inside, Belinda was making coffee, dressed for her job at the dental office. She looked up when I entered the kitchen, her expression cautious but hopeful. "Have you thought about what I said?" she asked. "I've thought about little else," I replied, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "If we're going to do this insane thing, we're going to do it with rules." Belinda's eyebrows went up. "So you're agreeing?" "I'm agreeing to discuss terms," I said firmly. "First rule, nothing happens in this house. Second rule, Iris doesn't find out. Third rule, you maintain complete honesty about where you are and when you'll be back." "Those seem reasonable," Belinda said, though something in her tone suggested she hadn't fully thought through the logistics. "Fourth rule," I continued, "this doesn't interfere with Iris's therapy schedule or her needs. She comes first always. And fifth rule, we reevaluate this whole arrangement in 3 months." Belinda smiled for the first time since our conversation had started. "Thank you for being so understanding about this, Garrison." But I wasn't being understanding. I was being strategic. Because while Belinda was planning her affair with Donovan, I was already planning something entirely different. I'd spent 20 years learning how electrical systems work, how to document installations for inspections, how to gather evidence for insurance claims. Those skills weren't just useful for solar panels. The first time Belinda met Donovan outside our home was on a Thursday afternoon when she was supposed to be taking Iris to behavioral therapy. I only found out because Iris called me from the therapist's office, confused about why no one had come to pick her up. "Dad, I'm still at Dr. Rebecca's office," Iris said when I answered my phone. I was on a roof in Palm Desert, halfway through installing a complex residential system. "What do you mean you're still there? Mom was supposed to pick you up an hour ago." "She didn't come. Dr. Rebecca says she tried calling Mom's phone, but it went to voicemail." I felt my blood pressure spike, but I kept my voice calm for Iris's sake. "Okay, sweetheart. Stay right there. I'm coming to get you." I climbed down from the roof, told my client I had a family emergency, and drove 45 minutes back to town. When I picked up Iris, she was sitting in the waiting room with her therapist, Dr. Rebecca Morrison, looking anxious and confused. "Mr. Mitchell," Dr. Rebecca said quietly, "is everything all right at home?" This is the first time Iris has been forgotten for a pickup. "There was a miscommunication," I said, hating that I was lying to cover for my wife's selfishness. "It won't happen again." But it did happen again. The following week, Belinda was 20 minutes late picking up Iris because her coffee date with Donovan had run long. Then she missed Iris's monthly appointment with her pediatrician because she was at a lunch that went longer than expected. That's when I started documenting everything. Every missed appointment, every late pickup, every time Belinda's new social life interfered with our daughter's needs. I started carrying a small digital recorder in my pocket, the kind I used for work notes when I was planning electrical installations. The breakthrough came 3 weeks into Belinda's arrangement with Donovan. I was in my workshop when I heard her talking on the phone in the kitchen, her voice carrying through the thin wall between the garage and the house. "I know it's complicated," she was saying, "but I can't just drop everything every time Iris has an issue. I've been dealing with her problems for 15 years, and I need some time for myself." I pressed the record button on my device and moved closer to the wall. "You don't understand what it's like," Belinda continued. "Sometimes I feel like she's an obstacle to any kind of normal happiness. I love her, but I can't let her needs control my entire life anymore." I stood there in my workshop, listening to my wife describe our autistic daughter as an obstacle to her happiness, and I knew that everything had changed. This wasn't about saving our marriage or exploring feelings. This was about a woman who was willing to abandon her responsibilities as a mother to chase validation from a younger man. I had 3 months' worth of evidence to gather, and I was just getting started. By the 6th week of Belinda's arrangement with Donovan, her behavior had become completely reckless. She was spending 3 evenings a week with him, missing family dinners, and leaving me to handle all of Iris's evening routines alone. But the breaking point came when I discovered what she was researching on her laptop. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was looking for our insurance documents to submit a claim for Iris's therapy sessions when I noticed a browser tab Belinda had left open on her computer. The web page was for a residential facility called Mountain View Academy, a boarding school for children with developmental disabilities. My blood ran cold as I read through the brochure she downloaded. This wasn't just a school. It was a full-time residential facility where parents could essentially warehouse their special needs children. The marketing materials talked about giving families the freedom to pursue their goals while providing comprehensive care for challenging cases. That evening, when Belinda came home from another dinner with Donovan, I confronted her about what I'd found. "You're researching boarding schools for Iris?" I asked, keeping my voice level despite the rage building inside me. Belinda had the decency to look embarrassed. "I was just exploring options." "Options for what?" "Getting rid of our daughter." "Don't be dramatic, Garrison. Mountain View Academy has an excellent reputation. Some children with autism thrive in structured residential environments. Iris thrives here, with her family, with her routines that we've spent years establishing." Belinda poured herself a glass of wine, her hands shaking slightly. "Do you know what it's like to be tied down by someone else's limitations for 15 years? Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed?" I activated the recorder in my pocket. "Tell me about these sacrifices, Belinda." "I've given up career opportunities, social opportunities, any chance at personal fulfillment. Every decision we make has to be filtered through what's best for Iris. I can't spontaneously go anywhere or do anything because everything has to be planned around her needs. She's our daughter. She's a 15-year-old who will never be independent," Belinda said, her voice rising. "She's going to need care for the rest of her life, and I'm tired of pretending that doesn't terrify me." I could hear the wine talking, but I also knew she was saying things she'd been thinking for months. "So your solution is to abandon her?" "My solution is to find her appropriate care while I still have some life left to live. I'm 40 years old, Garrison. If I don't make changes now, I'm going to wake up at 60 having never pursued my own happiness." "And Donovan supports this plan?" Belinda's expression became defensive. "Donovan understands that I need to prioritize my own well-being. He says I've been selfless long enough." I turned off the recorder, having heard everything I needed. "I see. And when exactly were you planning to discuss this major life decision with me?" "I wanted to research it thoroughly first. I wanted to have a complete plan before we talked about it. But we both knew the truth. She'd already made the decision. She was just looking for the right way to implement it." The next morning, I called Mountain View Academy myself. I told them I was researching options for my daughter and asked them to send me their complete information packet. When it arrived 3 days later, I was horrified by what I read. The facility was essentially a warehouse for families who wanted to remove special needs children from their lives. The monthly fees were astronomical, the staff-to-student ratio was minimal, and the therapeutic programs, were largely nonsense designed to justify the costs. More importantly, I discovered that Belinda had already submitted a preliminary application. She'd listed Iris as severely autistic with behavioral issues and described our home situation as unsustainable for the family unit. She'd completely misrepresented our daughter's capabilities and needs. That evening, I waited for Belinda to return from her date with Donovan. She came home around 11, slightly drunk and smelling like cigarettes, which was new. Donovan apparently smoked, and she was picking up his habits. "We need to talk about Mountain View Academy," I said as she hung up her coat. "What about it?" "You submitted an application without telling me." Belinda's face flushed. "I submitted a preliminary inquiry. That's not the same thing as an application. You described Iris as severely autistic with behavioral issues. You know that's not accurate. It's accurate enough to get her accepted to the program. You lied about our daughter's condition to get her into an institution." I described her challenges in terms that professionals would understand, Belinda said, her voice becoming sharp. "And before you get all righteous about it, consider the alternative. Consider what our lives look like in 5 years if nothing changes. Our lives look like a family taking care of each other." "Your life looks like that," she corrected. "My life looks like endless therapy appointments and meltdowns and never being able to have a normal relationship with my husband because everything revolves around our daughter's disorders." I felt something snap inside me. "Is that what Donovan told you? That you deserve a normal relationship?" "Donovan told me I deserve to be happy. He told me that sacrificing my entire life for a child who will never be able to give anything back isn't noble. It's just wasteful." "And you agree with him?" Belinda looked directly at me, and for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I saw something cold and calculating in her expression. "Yes, I do agree with him. I think Iris would be better off in a structured environment with trained professionals, and I think we would be better off without the constant stress of managing her needs." I had everything I needed now. Not just the recordings, not just the documentation of missed appointments and neglected responsibilities, but a clear statement of intent. Belinda wanted to institutionalize our daughter so she could pursue her affair without the inconvenience of actually being a parent. "Okay," I said simply. "Okay what?" "Okay, I understand your position completely now. So you'll consider Mountain View Academy?" "I'll consider everything," I said. "All the options." While Belinda was busy planning to ship Iris off to Mountain View Academy, I was quietly building my own case. 3 months of documented evidence, recorded conversations, and missed appointments had given me everything I needed. But I wanted one more piece of insurance before I made my move. I called my lawyer, David Brennan, a guy I'd known since high school who specialized in family law. We met at his office on a Thursday morning while Belinda was at work and Iris was at school. "Garrison," David said, reviewing the file I brought him, "this is pretty damning stuff. The recordings alone would be enough to secure full custody, but combined with the documentation of neglect and the evidence that she's trying to institutionalize Iris under false pretenses. What are my chances?" "Better than good, especially if we can prove that her affair is directly impacting her ability to care for Iris." David leaned back in his chair. "But I have to ask, are you sure you want to go nuclear on this? Once we file these papers, there's no going back." "She's already gone nuclear," I said. "She just doesn't know it yet." That afternoon, I installed a security camera system in our house. Small, wireless cameras that looked like smoke detectors. I told Belinda they were for home security, which wasn't technically a lie. I was securing my home against the threat that was living inside it. The cameras captured everything. Belinda bringing Donovan into our house on Friday afternoon, while Iris was at a therapy session. The two of them drinking wine in our kitchen, making plans for Iris's transition to residential care. Donovan suggesting that once Iris was taken care of, Belinda could move in with him. But the most damaging footage came the following Tuesday. Iris had been having a particularly difficult day. Her routine had been disrupted because Belinda forgot to pick up her prescription medication. When Iris started having an anxiety episode, crying and rocking in her room, Belinda completely lost her temper. "I can't deal with this anymore," she screamed at our 15-year-old daughter, who was already overwhelmed and scared. "This is exactly why you need to be somewhere with people who are trained to handle your problems." I was in my workshop when I heard the shouting. By the time I got inside, Belinda was on the phone with Donovan, complaining about how Iris's episode had ruined her evening plans. "She's getting worse," Belinda told him, not bothering to lower her voice even though Iris could hear every word. The sooner we can get her into that facility, the better. I can't pretend to be the perfect autism mom anymore. I had it all on camera. Every cruel word, every moment of neglect, every time she prioritized her affair over our daughter's well-being. That night, after Belinda left for another dinner with Donovan, I sat down with Iris and had the hardest conversation of my life. "Sweetheart," I said, "things are going to change around here pretty soon, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, you're staying with me. You're never going to be sent away anywhere." Iris looked at me with those serious brown eyes. "Is Mom going away?" "Mom made some choices that are going to have consequences," I said carefully. "But you and I are going to be just fine." The breaking point came when Belinda's parents arrived for an unannounced visit on a Saturday morning. Margaret and Robert Hawkins had always been supportive of their daughter, sometimes to a fault. When they walked into our kitchen and found Belinda on the phone with Donovan, planning another evening out, I knew this was my moment. "Belinda," her mother said. "Who are you talking to?" "Just a friend, Mom," Belinda said, but her face was flushed with guilt. "What friend requires you to whisper and smile like that?" Robert asked, his expression growing stern. "I made a decision." "Margaret, Robert, there's something you need to know about what's been happening in this house." Belinda's eyes went wide. "Garrison, don't." "Your daughter has been having an affair for the past 3 months," I said calmly. "But that's not the worst part. The worst part is what she's planning to do to Iris." "What do you mean?" Margaret asked, looking confused. I pulled out my laptop and showed them the Mountain View Academy website. "Belinda wants to institutionalize Iris so she can pursue her relationship with her boyfriend without the inconvenience of being a parent." "That's not true," Belinda protested. "I'm looking into appropriate care options for Iris's future." "Show them the application you submitted," I said. "Show them how you described our daughter as severely autistic with behavioral issues. Show them the lies you told to get her accepted." Robert's face was turning red. "Belinda, is this true?" "It's more complicated than Garrison is making it sound," Belinda said, but her voice was shaking. "Let me make it simple," I said, pulling out my phone. "Would you like to hear what your daughter really thinks about Iris?" I played the recording from the previous week. Belinda's voice filled the kitchen, talking about how Iris was an obstacle to her happiness, how she was tired of sacrificing her life for a child who would never be independent, how she deserved to pursue her own fulfillment. The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret was staring at her daughter like she was looking at a stranger. Robert was gripping the back of a kitchen chair, so hard his knuckles were white. "Belinda," Margaret said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, "how could you say such things about your own child?" "You don't understand what it's been like," Belinda said, tears starting to flow. 15 years of therapy appointments and special diets and meltdowns. 15 years of never being able to be spontaneous or free. "I'm 40 years old, and I feel like my life is over." "Your life is over." Robert's voice was like ice. "What about Iris's life? What about the life she'll have if you abandon her?" "I'm not abandoning her. I'm finding her appropriate care. You're warehousing her so you can sleep with your boyfriend," I said bluntly. Margaret stood up abruptly. "We're taking Iris home with us. Today." "You can't do that," Belinda protested. "Watch us," Robert said. "Our granddaughter deserves better than this." Within 2 hours, Margaret and Robert had packed Iris's things and taken her to their house across town. Iris was confused but seemed to understand that she was being protected from something bad. That evening, alone in our house for the first time in months, Belinda finally asked the question I'd been waiting for. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to file for divorce," I said, "and I'm going to seek full custody of Iris. And thanks to your cooperation over the past 3 months, I have enough evidence to ensure that you'll never have unsupervised access to our daughter again." The custody hearing took place 6 weeks later in Riverside County Family Court. I sat at the plaintiff's table with my attorney David Brennan, feeling more confident than I had in months. Across the aisle, Belinda sat with her lawyer, looking pale and defeated. Judge Patricia Morrison reviewed our case file for several minutes before addressing the courtroom. "This case involves allegations of parental neglect and abandonment. Mr. Brennan, please present your evidence." David stood up and activated the courtroom's audio system. "Your Honor, I'd like to play a recording made by Mr. Mitchell documenting his wife's attitude toward their special needs daughter." The courtroom fell silent as Belinda's voice filled the room. Her words about Iris being an obstacle to happiness, about deserving to pursue her own fulfillment, about being tired of sacrificing for a child who would never be independent, echoed off the walls with devastating clarity. I watched Belinda's parents in the gallery. Margaret was crying silently, and Robert looked like he wanted to disappear. Even Belinda's own lawyer looked uncomfortable. Your Honor, David continued, Mrs. Mitchell not only expressed these sentiments privately, but she also took concrete steps to institutionalize Iris under false pretenses. He presented the Mountain View Academy application, where Belinda had misrepresented Iris's condition. When it was time for cross-examination, Belinda's attorney tried to argue that the recordings were taken without consent and that her client was simply exploring care options for Iris's future. Mrs. Mitchell, Judge Morrison said directly, these recordings suggest you view your daughter as a burden. Can you explain that? Belinda stood up shakily. Your Honor, caring for a special needs child is incredibly challenging. I was going through a difficult time and said things I didn't mean. You submitted false information about your daughter's condition to a residential facility. That suggests premeditation, not momentary frustration. Belinda had no answer for that. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. Based on the evidence presented, including documented neglect of medical appointments, recorded statements indicating intent to abandon parental responsibilities, and deliberate misrepresentation of the child's condition to facilitate unwanted institutionalization, I'm awarding full physical and legal custody to Mr. Mitchell. Belinda would be allowed supervised visits twice a month, contingent on completing parenting classes and counseling. As we left the courtroom, Belinda tried to approach me. Garrison, please. We can work this out. We just did, I said. The court worked it out. David handed me the custody papers. Congratulations. Iris is safe now. That evening, I picked up Iris from her grandparents' house. She hugged me tightly, something she rarely did because of her sensory issues. Are we going home now, Dad? Yes, sweetheart. We're going home. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Iris and I had settled into our new routine. I'd converted the guest room into a proper bedroom for her, painted in the soft blue she preferred. The house felt peaceful without the constant tension of Belinda's presence. Iris was thriving in ways I hadn't expected. Her therapy sessions were consistent now, never missed or rescheduled for someone else's convenience. Her anxiety levels had decreased significantly once the household stress disappeared. She'd even started helping me with simple electrical work, organizing components, and learning basic safety procedures. Dad, she said one Saturday morning while we worked in my shop, I'm glad Mom doesn't live here anymore. Why is that, sweetheart? She was always angry when I needed help. You're never angry when I need help. It broke my heart and filled me with pride simultaneously. Iris had noticed everything, understood more than I'd given her credit for. The divorce settlement had been straightforward. I kept the house, the business, and primary custody. Belinda kept her car and half our savings, which wasn't much after legal fees. She'd moved in with Donovan temporarily, but that relationship fell apart within 2 months. Apparently, he was more interested in a childless woman than one with ongoing custody obligations. Belinda's supervised visits were sporadic. She'd missed 3 of her last 5 scheduled appointments, each time with increasingly flimsy excuses. Iris stopped asking when Mom was coming and started talking about weekend plans with me instead. Margaret and Robert visited every other weekend, grateful to maintain their relationship with Iris. They'd completely cut contact with Belinda after learning about her plan to institutionalize their granddaughter. I don't understand how we raise someone who could be so selfish, Margaret told me during one visit. People make choices, I said. Sometimes those choices reveal who they really are. My business was growing too. Word had spread about my situation, and several clients had specifically requested my services because they respected how I'd handled the family crisis. There's something to be said for showing integrity under pressure. On a sunny Tuesday afternoon, while Iris drew detailed sketches of solar panel installations in my workshop, I realized something important. This wasn't a life I'd planned, but it was a good life. A honest life. A life where my daughter felt safe and valued. Dad, Iris said, looking up from her drawing, are you happy? Yes, sweetheart. I'm very happy. Me too, she said, returning to her work. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just building something better than what you lost.